Ready to go? Good evening. Welcome to the Silverton, Oregon City Council meeting, November 1st, 2010. Please join me in the salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Item 2 on the agenda is public comment. This is a time for anyone in the audience who wishes to bring something before the council that is not an agenda item this evening. I repeat, not an agenda item.
I'd like to bring something up.
Okay. The chair recognizes our number one volunteer in town.
Most of you know me, so...
We still have to know officially who you are on the record.
Vince Till.
Okay.
And address?
Till the end of time. What I have heard quite a little bit about is the beautification of downtown here and possibly cutting down some of the trees. I would like to make a recommendation on that, and what I'm thinking of is those trees, the only reason they're in the shape they're in is because they've never been taken care of. I think some of you know that I believe it was Mr. Rose that planted those trees or was an instrument in it back in the 1970s. And he left a little money for the city when he died to take care of the trees. Before that, they chopped all the trees down because they were too big. So they replanted about that time. And then there was no money from the city. So what you see is what you got. But what I would recommend is that you took the top 3/4 of those trees out. In other words, keep the lower quarter and go up from the stump of the tree about 10 feet, and then from that point to the top, cut back 3/4 of those branches. Then take and go into the center of the tree and thin them out so the air can get in around them. Go down to the base of the tree and take a saw and follow your concrete, your sidewalk around, cutting the roots so that they don't upheave the concrete. Now when you take a look at that concrete, you've got some concrete that goes back to 1920 on those sidewalks, 1910. If you don't believe me, take a look at the rings down there on South Water Street, for instance. That's where they tethered the horses back in that era. That's why those rings are still in the concrete. So that concrete is pretty tired, I would say. And where you see a little upheaval, like around the Mexican restaurant down there, if those roots are cut back and new sidewalk is laid in there, I don't think you'd have a problem. Now, what's it going to cost to do this? It may be $400 a tree. Now, I'm just taking this off the top of my head. It may be less. It depends on who you get and how good they are at it, but I certainly would get somebody that understood trees. You can get anybody to cut the top 3/4 out, but from there on, of getting the branches properly, then you need somebody that understands trees. And I would take and check them for fungus, and if they have it, and sometimes you get that in the wintertime, I would get them sprayed. And in the spring and summer, I would spray them to keep the bugs off of them. And then they could be maintained on a regular basis. Now, you got about 25 trees or so in town, and say about $8,000 to $10,000 to do the job. It's worth thinking about. And if you're the flower city or the garden city of Oregon, it sure wouldn't look good chopping trees down. You got to think, and as far as the rest of the town of fixing things up, this could all be done in the wintertime. And the sidewalks, I wouldn't widen them any, but I'd tear them out and start over. And you know how I'd do it? I'd start in the dead of winter, of January, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and take them out. And why would I do it then? Because there's less people coming into town at that time. And if you did it in the summertime and that, you're going to hurt the businesses downtown. And if you do it when there's the least amount of disturbance, it would work the best that way. And as far as the traffic goes, you can't make those sidewalks bigger. You've got Grand Central Station down there with traffic moving through the town unless you want to bypass Silverton, and then you wouldn't help the town a bit. Now, that was just a few of my thoughts on this particular area. And the trees concern me the most because they tie in with your baskets and all. And it's a thought, and think about it. Maybe it'll be something you can use rather than put pots out with just a little tree in them, which will take forever to come. Plus, there's one disadvantage in these big pots. In the wintertime, you've got cold air going all around there. If you get a real hard winter, the roots are going to freeze, and they may freeze too hard and not come back on you. That's why you plant trees in the ground and not in pots. But for what it's worth, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vince.
Okay. You want me to sign this, I presume?
Please.
All right.
Sue, I guess you're next. Well, I don't have the list. You get signed in, and then we take catch as catch can.
Here, you go ahead and sign.
Okay, I'm ready.
Oh, you're already in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Honorable Council. I hope you all received my letter that I sent. I applied for a development loan to reopen my business, bring it back up to the property standards it was at when I initially came to Silverton and invested over $400,000 in the property. And I just wanted to point to my record of getting a loan from the city before, paying it back, in a timely manner, and wish to be considered again for these funds. My loan, the parts of my loan that were rejected were the parts that were not installed totally in the building. They're plumbed into the building. They're part of the building except for the point of sale system, which is a real necessary part of a successful food and beverage business, and that's something that will go out of date my last one lasted 7 years, and so, it's about 7 years anyway. But the payback on this loan is 5 years, and the amount that I'd be paying back at the city's rate would be less than leasing just one of those machines. The whole thing is guaranteed by the property, of which I own 80% of the value, and I still have 20% in a loan. I have no other liens on the property. I've carefully read the literature that asked about what was in the loan, and I cannot see anything that conflicts. So I'm using the appeal process as I know it to be through the city council. Any questions? So please just read what you have, and if you have any questions or if Brian has any comments to make, I'm sure he will. So please consider my application. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions, council? This would probably be for the Urban Renewal Agency rather than the city council, but this body is also the board of directors of that, so.
No, this is city funds. It's a loan program. It's through the non-discretionary community development block grant funds that we have for a commercial facade
Okay.
loan program.
And that's not Urban Renewal?
No.
Okay.
There are two separate funds.
Okay, then you're before the right body.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Oh, okay.
But I think she's asking you for some direction because she submitted an application which Steve reviewed and then I reviewed, and according to the program guidelines, I could only pick out $4,500 that we could possibly use for that program.
And that's because it's the facade.
No, we expanded that to include commercial tenant improvements that improve the value or commercial viability of the building. But it would be a huge stretch for me to go beyond the $4,500 that I identified as fitting in within the program guidelines. And I think she's asking you for a different definition of the program guidelines than what I'm reading in there.
Well then, okay, excuse us for just a minute while we have a discussion here. I thought this would fit in the guidelines for urban renewal for property improvements, and didn't realize that this was the other loan program.
She didn't request a grant, she requested a loan, and I don't believe it's in the urban renewal.
Urban renewal can make grants or loans.
It's not in the urban renewal district, so she wouldn't qualify for urban renewal funds anyway. It would be, the only thing she could qualify for is the commercial facade building improvement loan program.
So the urban renewal district is on the other side of the street from her?
Correct. It includes the Redmond property, but not property on the other side.
I just want the same one that
But we-
Seven Brides.
Okay, we can't have conversations out there, so I'll try and explain it.
Well, actually, it's not on the agenda in public meetings law, so this should come back at the right time after you have the entire packet ready for you.
Okay.
Well, but I need some direction from you on what you want me to bring back, because it's not in the urban renewal district, so it couldn't qualify for urban renewal funds, period.
In terms of the program that it would qualify for if you were looking at it from another perspective, and I realize the limitations, is that money pretty competitively spoken for? Are there any reasons why this body couldn't change the program in this climate, given our city survey results, to do more than just those things? Is that a possibility?
I mean, I couldn't give you a recommendation to expand it into providing seed money for operations. I mean, I can point to Oregon City that funded $250,000 for operations that they had to walk away from 2 years ago, that they had to eat. So you can, of course, you can look at your guidelines and you can make any changes you want. I couldn't recommend that you do that, but if you directed me to do it, I obviously would do that.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
Well, wouldn't the place to start bring back the guidelines that we need to look at?
Yep,
I'd like
next
to
we'll
month's
put those in
meeting?
your packet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I think we need to look at.
Okay, do we want to expand that to consider working with Sioux Countrymen, or just take a look at it?
Well, I think we need to see the
I
guidelines
think we
first.
need to, too.
I'd like to see them.
Yeah.
And you need to look at my loan, which
Yeah.
is none of it is for operations. All of it is capital.
Okay. All right. You are so
December
directed.
agenda.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yes, sir, sorry.
Now we're ready.
Now it's your turn.
Okay, good evening, all of you. My name is Harold Johnson. I live at 1310 North Water Street in Silverton here. Now, we've had some problems, and I'm sure that we have a lady here and a gentleman that will address those problems again. But now I'm going to address something that I believe is near and dear to my heart.
Could I interrupt
And-
for just a moment? Is this about the stop sign and the traffic situation?
No, this,
This is beyond water and
they'll
drain?
talk about that.
Okay, this is
but
something
This is
else.
something
Okay,
else.
fine.
Okay? But it has to do with what's off Water Street and Grant. You had a fire there last week. Do you all remember that? You had a fire back on Maple Street? Okay, now, when you went in there, you should be able, it should be a through street, right? It's not. It's, I got pictures to show you.
Doesn't Maple just turn to the west and dead end?
This way?
Doesn't Maple just, it turns to the west and dead ends back, basically parallel to Water Street?
I think everybody thinks it does, but it's actually, if you go, you should be able to go down Grant, turn left, and come back around. Well, you can't, because as you can see with that picture that I give you, there's a fence down the middle of Grant. Does that make any sense, what I'm talking about? I've talked to Kyle about it.
You're talking about the easement that exists for a road that's really not there at this moment.
It's not, but it's, I have a city map, and it shows that it's a through street.
Okay,
And someone asked me, where'd you get the map? I got it from City Hall.
good spot to get a map.
upstairs.
Okay,
So, and then I had the man that was in charge of Public Works. He come out there to give me this, the map,
okay.
just before he quit. And so I took him down to that street. I went back, I showed him, he wanted to see where the fire was. It was a house fire. It's about 11:30 at night. So I took him back there, and he said, well, where's the street? And I said, there's a fence there. You can't go through. And so he went down, he had his tape measure, and he taped it out, and he said, it looks like the fence is in about 25 feet of city property.
Okay,
And he said, well, I'm just about ready to go on a new job, so I'll tell you what. I'll give you a person's name that will follow up on this. And I said, who is it? And he said, Andy Peters.
okay.
Who is he?
Right there.
That's him right over there.
So, and I'll bet you,
How's the follow-up?
I'll bet you that Andy Peters probably don't know anything about this.
Is that a safe bet, Andy?
True, sir.
I think he knows about it now.
I will help you, though.
Okay,
But I used to be on the fire department in Staten. So when I was there for about 15 years, and one of my jobs when I was on the fire department was looking for things like this. So when I say it's near and dear to my heart, it is. Because when you take a fire truck down there, Mr. Teal will tell you what went on down there. There was a lot of traffic. Well, if you go in,
you have to back out.
you have to back out.
Okay,
So I went a little bit further. I went down and talked to I went down to see the fire chief. The fire chief wasn't there. So I talked to the assistant chief. And he told me that he would bring it up with, I believe it was with you also, but I don't know. But it's just something that's really dear to my heart. I want to see that no person should have his house burned because we've blocked off a passage.
okay.
And at the corner of our house where I live at 1310 North Water is a fire hydrant. Now, if they would have come in there and needed water, they could have just come down the street, come down the back road and
laid hose in from that
laid
hydrant.
hose in from there.
Okay.
So I'll be glad to work with anybody.
I think it's safe to say that now that this has been brought to our attention, and if it is indeed a public right-of-way, we will have, one way or another, that fence won't be there fairly quickly. But
Well-
if it's not, if it's, if it's an easement and they own the property, if there's other funny business going on, then it's going to take some time. But would that be a safe assumption?
Well, just looking at this picture, I don't see how a fire truck could ever use that for a turnaround. It looks like,
Well,
No,
it's not
it wouldn't be a turnaround.
It's an extension of Grant Street that then turns left
It's
and
an extension
becomes
of
Maple
Grant Street that goes down.
yeah, we'll look at it and come back and tell you whether or not it's in the public right-of-way.
Okay?
We actually rectified a fence in the public right-of-way issue 6-7 months ago.
7 months ago.
Yeah.
7 months.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go.
And the last time I was here, Dennis, when we were, this is about the speeding on Water Street. I believe it was Dennis said, why are we just now hearing about this? I didn't know it was a problem. Well, if somebody would have talked to the chief of police, they'd have found out, because we've been having problems for a good 2 years, and we've been trying to slow the traffic down.
Okay?
And so it's been, if we don't go to the chief of police, who do we go to if we got a problem? Do we go to someone on the city council?
Well,
I don't know.
if you're not getting results from city staff, then the council is who you need to talk to.
But, I mean, it's been an ongoing problem. And hopefully, by what I see here, at least it's a start of a draft.
Okay?
Can I add to that? Because
Sure.
there was some issues that were brought up at the last council meeting that kind of threw me back a little bit when I heard that I had been emailed a year ago. I went through all those emails, and there was a lot of work that was done on that. That's how we declared that area a school zone. There was a lot of signage improvements and a whole list of things that came out of that. So what I'm hearing now is different than what I was hearing back then. We had to petition Marion County to change that school zone. That was all a part of the concerns that were brought up at that time. So a
Right,
lot
but-
of work was done on that issue.
I think we primarily addressed, though, Pine Street there, Pine at Grant, and didn't really get to the Grant at Water Street area.
I think that was all part of the same conversation.
It was part of the same conversation in
Thank you.
terms of crosswalks and stuff, but there was an awful lot of conversation. I just think that what we were focusing on that time primarily was getting the speed on Pine Street stopped and finished, but it was part of the conversation.
Okay.
I have one more question. Now, I do a lot of walking, and I walk back through the high school, the new one,
Okay.
back there. And I try to walk about 7:15 in the morning. And I wanted to see how many kids come up the back way. And I think Friday, I counted 15 kids. Now that don't sound like many, but when you look, there's no sidewalks on that street.
Which street are you referring
It's
to?
down,
Grant Street or?
Yeah.
no, it would be down by the Baptist church, or what, it comes around, back down on the end, where it comes into the
So
new
either-
shop and that.
Either
That's
Florida or
Western.
Western?
That's
Okay.
But I also noticed that when the kids come up there to stop, there's absolutely no crosswalk. I mean, I seen those 15 kids just going helter-skelter when they were going across the road. And I thought, why isn't there a crosswalk? Well, who designates a crosswalk? I don't know.
It's
But-
back to us and city staff. Okay?
Okay?
Thank you. Is this a progress report?
It's a progress report, yes.
All right.
I'm signed in, Terry Thomas, 715 Eureka Avenue, Silverton. Kiwanis Club of Silverton's project coordinator for the Christmas tree, or Christmas light decorations. Happy to report, we ordered 46 decorations. They are ready for delivery. I received that phone call today. We have received the funds from different donors of 23 of the units. And we have the commitments for most of the others. Looks like it's going to come in before we pick up the units next week. So pleased with that. Been working with PGE, with Right Way Electric, and with Andy Peters, who has done an outstanding job in responding to all my emails and suggesting how things can get done quicker. So I'm really pleased. Thank you, Andy. We have the units for applying them on the poles from Right Way. Mayor, thank you for following up on that and making sure that we're charged a reasonable amount.
You're welcome.
That was good news. We thought it was a good buy, and your confirmation helped. It's moving along quickly. We do not yet have a commitment from PGE for money or for work. They've promised it, and I'll be following up with them to see that we get it. I think it's going to be coming very shortly. What we're asking them to do is, one, we would really love for them to apply the apparatus of the appliances, what do you call those, the receptacles, onto the poles. They have agreed to hook on the power. And then I kind of slipped in a little bit. It would be nice if they'd take off the old stuff. And they kind of got a little shook up. But right now they're discussing that. And it could clean up the looks of our poles. We have identified the entire area of how many poles are needed. They just haven't given me the email to say which ones we can actually use. And I expect that in the next day or so. Again, getting it back to Andy so we can finish the process. Thank you very much for your cooperation. It has been a fantastic project to date. It's looking really good that it will be completed by Thanksgiving. So, thank you again.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the reins on that.
It was scary, but it was great.
Good. Thank you. Anything else in public comment? Okay, going once, going twice. Moving on to approval of the minutes from the October 4th meeting. Any corrections, additions, subtractions?
Move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Further discussion? Question been called for. Those in favor of approving the minutes from the October 4th meeting signify by an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the consent agenda. Any item that anyone wishes to remove from there? I'd like to talk about 4.1. Anything else? Okay. We have, I'm going to start on 4.1, which is a professional services agreement for updating the city's website. This troubles me on a number of different areas, one of which is we have only one bidder. The bidder's in Kansas. It seems like website design is something that we teach in Silverton High School, Portland State, the Art Museum. It's like we did not advertise very widely to find this service. And I object to spending $24,000 on something that we could probably find a local source for and probably a whole lot cheaper.
Well, if you read the RFP, the design part is just a minor portion. It's the design, it's the hosting, it's the e-government services, all the modules that go with that. There's a very extensive list of services that are being provided as part of the $26,000. It's not just the design of it.
Well, there's the design, there's the hosting, and there's a bunch of database management stuff that honestly you could buy in a site in a box for $1,000 or less.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the League of Oregon Cities is our current hoster, and they've got some out-of-the-box that they do for many cities. And yet, from our survey, it was very clear that our constituents wanted more services, more communication. And from what I read from the RFP and what was responded, this company provides those additional features that we don't get from the League of Oregon Cities, which, as I recall, was an upgrade about 4 or 5 years ago from our previous website that we had.
Yeah, I think your original website when I got here was a locally designed that really didn't offer much in the way of interactive opportunities. It was not a very robust system. I don't know what you paid for it. Then we subsequently went to the League of Oregon Cities, which was a little bit better, but you can survey any number of municipal governments in Oregon, and I did, and made some calls to some cities that have upgraded their websites, and $26,000 really for what we're attempting to get out of this is on the low end. The only local provider that I know of that does government, that has all the modules built in, is AHA Consulting. And they recently did Newburgh, Westland, and Oregon City. And those projects range from $28,000 to $70,000, depending on what those cities wanted. And most of those cities, all those cities that I surveyed, all have their own servers and IT department. We have neither of those. So really what we need is a one-stop operation that will allow us to get annual updates and to make sure that we're providing all the services that our citizens tell us they want. Email notifications on city council meetings, that when agenda items are posted to the website, anybody who wants to be notified of that will be automatically notified. We don't have the staff with the capabilities to do that. So finding somebody locally that has insurance and all the requirements that RFP has built into it for $26,000, you're not going to be able to find it locally. And they are the largest provider of local government website design and hosting in the United States. And there's some economies of scale there that go with a company that large that we can't get locally.
I reiterate my statement that I'm sure we could find someone closer than Kansas who could provide everything that we're asking for less money. And we did not advertise anywhere that I can find other than the Daily Journal of Commerce, which I don't think very many local providers actually subscribe to. Did we do any outreach whatsoever?
I don't know of any local providers that could provide what
And
we're
how
asking
exactly would you find out about them if you didn't go out and maybe put an ad in the newspaper and say, we're looking for a web designer?
I would be aware of local companies that do design services for municipal governments. And the ones that I was aware of, I did call.
And those were?
AHA Consulting is the only one in Oregon that does municipal government web hosting.
I find that difficult to believe. Okay.
I said it's the only one I'm aware of, Mr. Mayor.
Their response to you when you reached out to them was?
I just talked about what they could provide and gave them a copy of the RFP and looked forward to their proposal, but never saw a proposal.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I believe it was about 3 years ago, the Chamber of Commerce entered into an agreement with a relatively local company with a good reputation, and the basic price was $7,000 to start. And it served its purpose initially, and this is not my area of expertise, so I apologize for any semantics about anything I'm going to present here. But as far as web hosting, as far as tying it into different avenues like Constant Contact and things like that, every time that we wanted to add, we had to spend additional monies to do that. So consequently, the Chamber is now budgeting to go away from that current provider for our website, or the Chamber's website, and looking further. So again, $6,000 or $7,000, and it just doesn't do what we want it to do.
I'm not saying that there's not someone local that couldn't design a website for less than $26,000. That's not our issue. Designing a website is not the issue. That's part of what they provide. The bigger issue is the modules they provide. It's the robustness of the service and the server that they have. It's the fact that we don't have to do any maintenance because we don't have any computer people on staff. We don't have to provide a server. We get 10 giga dinosaurs of storage space, which is far more than we would ever need. The League of Oregon City, I think, is what, 400 megabytes? So we're constantly running into problems where our website is down because we just don't have the storage capacity. We want to put maps on there. There's a lot of memory things that we need and a lot of storage space as a requirement of that.
So, and Brian, if I read the RFP correctly, the e-government features include secure transmission of credit card numbers, transmission of signatures for contracts or applications, credit card authorization and capture, real-time completion of transactions with updates to the City of Silverton's database, ability to download, complete, and submit back to the City of Silverton various PDF forms, the Notify Me function, which is the email alert that you...
There's a whole 3 pages of stuff that they provide as part of their base service that it's kind of standard stuff for city government now in terms of what you offer your citizens. And quite frankly, the more we can offer online when we're looking at, tough economic times, the more we can offer citizens electronically, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, I agree, and they did offer a lot of things that just create more opportunities for communication. The opinion poll, the Notify Me, some of those things, if those are specialty things that this company can provide, I think those are answering some of the questions people have had in the survey about being informed. So
And
I really like that.
Can I just add that during the budget process, the budget committee and the city council, which is a part of that, did approve $30,000 for this upgrade. That number wasn't just grabbed out of thin air. I did a lot of research in terms of what I thought it would take for us to upgrade ours in terms of the modules that we would need.
Good question.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. What's the rollout date? Just tentative?
After approval, it's about a 6-month process. It includes 3 days of staff training and a variety of other information gathering.
Are we entering contract with LLC, or is that just a month-to-month?
We would end that contract.
Thank you.
And you and I spoke about this earlier today. My concern isn't whether there may or may not be somebody in town that could do this. It's extensive, and I'd be surprised. But my concern more is that I wouldn't know the answer to that question. And just broadly speaking, not just about this agenda item, but is it possible for us when we place an ad in the Daily Journal of Commerce to also place the same ad in the Silverton Appeal? Just so we can say it was there. If you were there, you saw it. Otherwise, we're going to assume, since you didn't respond, that there is no local provider. Because my feeling too is that a lot of people, specifically that might do web work, may not be a member of the DJC and wouldn't see that ad. And I'd like to, in all levels, make sure we've had something out locally too. I do think this particular issue is extensive and government specific, and probably not something we're going to find somebody local to do. But in general, I would like us to do that locally as well.
Well, anytime we go for something where we know there's local providers that could do the job, we do solicit local quotes.
Well, that's my point. Is I don't know if we can ever know who's out there. Specifically, there could be somebody doing this work that I wouldn't even know about. You may not know about. You more likely know more than I do about it. But that's a way of making sure we've done our due diligence.
Councilor Palmer, I think that's an excellent suggestion, and I would be in favor of moving forward in that direction in the future.
Well, how about a motion then to reject this bid and re-advertise and actually go into the local market, see if there is somebody closer than Kansas that can provide this?
What kind of time would we be looking?
There's really no rush on this. The only rush is that every community survey says you need to communicate more and better.
No.
So,
and I'm asking you for us to take a step back, put the ad out locally, and move through this process again. What kind of time are we going to lose?
a couple months.
2 months.
And just the cost of re-advertising. Because now you're talking about, we still have to do the DJC. That's our standard requirement. And now you're also talking about an ad in the Appeal Tribune, I assume? That would be probably another $400 or $500. What do those ads typically run, Janet?
For this particular type of ad, I'm not sure what the cost would be.
$400.
So now RFP is not low bid, that's request for proposal.
Right, there's a specific...
One could assume that a local provider could respond, but not have the qualification to meet the RFP requirement based on what we've got put out here.
They'd have to have a $2 million aggregate insurance policy.
That was, and that's the other thing that's attached here that I was looking at was the insurance, certificate of insurance, which is quite large for a local body.
Brian, if we tabled it instead of rejected it, would that create the same 2-month time frame and have to go back to the DJ?
Yeah, we still have to
read
re-advertise.
it.
And we have to notify this company and tell them that they'd have to respond again, although we probably accept their original proposal.
Well, I didn't hear a motion, okay. Anything else on the consent agenda for discussion? Motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Quick discussion, I will be voting no just because I think 4.1 is a phenomenal waste of money.
Discussion on 4.2, I'll be abstaining for potential conflict of interest.
Okay. Call for the question. Question is called for. Those in favor of adopting the consent agenda signify by an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Consent agenda is adopted. All right, discussion/action items. Let me ask the audience, who is here for urban chicken discussion and who is here for North Water at Grant Street, just so we can take those of you who are here for the urban chickens?
No, there's.
Okay, Grant Street? All right, Grant Street has outnumbered the chickens this time, so we will take 5.2 first and then the comparable study of urban chickens second.
Yeah, first.
Any staff information about urban chickens?
You do want to do the urban chickens first?
Is that what I, oh, no.
No, Grant.
Water Street first, Water and Grant.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, council members, you have the packet that Rob Charles put together regarding the Grant Street and Water Street traffic issues. I myself reviewed it and find that what he's proposing appears to be acceptable based on the issues at hand. What he's saying in the report is that speeding, while there may be some occurrences at times, it's predominantly 85% of the time it is below or at average speed limit for that area. And the options discussed were the speed humps or bumps, and then of course other traffic calming measures. And in looking at this particular situation, it was determined to go ahead with the striping and signage to try to control the traffic in the proper lanes and help reduce, I guess, crossing over the lanes, which was one item. And then as far as the actual speeding, you can put humps in there, but there's always other repercussions that you have to look at. And this site really just doesn't fit it properly, just more so that the fact that speeding is not the #1 issue, or we don't see it as being a big enough of a problem to warrant the usage of speed humps. So in the proposal you're seeing is some signs, corner signs given the arrow, reduced speed limit of 15 miles per hour, and then a striping with some of the markers, they call them, that basically your tires hit them and gives you the feel that you're crossing over the lane. There was another proposal in here as well. I think it talked about the use of removal of a power pole and then put in a longer radius on the curb return. And that could happen. I think he quoted a price of about $3,000. One thing to be wary of is that the more you widen that corner, you just kind of made it more acceptable to go faster around the corner as well. So that would probably defeat your purpose.
Why is a stop sign or a pair of stop signs at that corner not an option?
From what I've gathered, the stop signs, the placement of a stop sign isn't something the city just usually does at every intersection. It's primarily used at intersections such as if you're coming out to Water Street, a street that's more of an arterial or a collector status. What we have there is 2 local streets, and so it's quite common not to place stop signs rather than to just use them on every intersection throughout the town. So from a safety standpoint, they're more specifically placed in locations where you have higher traffic volumes.
Okay, but this particular area, the residents have said that there is a problem with people speeding around that corner and cutting the corner, and it is basically a shortcut that cuts one stop sign off of the high school traffic from James at Water to Grant at Pine.
Right.
So this has become the preferred route just because there is one less stop sign there. And I don't see that striping the pavement will create anything other than equally fast traffic that stays in its own lane.
You know, striping can create other issues, or not the striping, but the markers.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing to keep in mind is when you put markers in there, people coming through with trailers and other bouncy items, they're going to rattle. And so you're going to hear people going through there a little bit more often as they hit those bumps, depending on the type of vehicle. When you read the Uniform Traffic Code manual, it doesn't suggest the use of a traffic stop sign in this type of an application. Now, if the city wished to go that direction, we could definitely add one, but it's not a normal application. I think what we're talking about is some apparent high speed going through there, probably likely the high school kids going through there. It's more of an enforcement issue, potentially, versus trying to place signs at every intersection throughout town. And I know we're talking about one intersection, but we also set a precedence along the way. So we just don't want to overwhelm the city with too many stop signs in areas that we don't typically would consider, at least as a measure for what this incident, what's going on here in this case. Even without the stop sign, the kids could still go through that same location and very well may still exceed speeds if they wish to do so. I hear what you're saying as well, though, that maybe with the second stop sign, there's no encouragement to go through that route, is what you're suggesting.
Right. Right now,
Yeah.
it is the express route.
Right.
There is one fewer stop sign going that direction.
And I could tell you it would be, from a cost standpoint, cheaper to put one stop sign in versus striping and putting in the
Well, it would be 2 stop
markers.
signs because you would need to do it for morning traffic and evening traffic. The Grand Prix
Well,
of
2, one for
Grant
each
Street.
direction if you wanted to go that route. I
Yeah.
don't know if we're presumably looking at one direction of the issues, just the directional in one way, or are they come in both directions?
I presume it is shorter going both ways because
Yeah,
there are
well,
no stop signs.
Yeah.
Well, it's a supposition that it's shorter. I actually took the time one morning and sat there across from the church and watched what occurred. It was on a Tuesday morning, I believe, and there was one high school student that took that intersection. And what I perceived to be the problem is probably initially when school started and everything, a lot of kids were going that way, but because traffic is so heavy on Pine Street, there's not a lot of opening to make that left turn. And so therefore, there was not a lot of traffic. There was the one student. The other thing that occurred was there's some sort of Bible study or function that occurs Tuesday mornings and appears also occurs Thursday mornings at that church. And what I noticed was cars that came and they parked along Grant Street and then they walked across the crosswalk there at Pine. But that was I did not watch the afternoon traffic, and I have not watched the lunch traffic, which I could see maybe going the opposite way, being fast, but I did watch the morning traffic.
So, Counselor, you're saying there wasn't that much traffic going because of the left-hand turn?
Because that early in the morning with school session, there's so much traffic, you try and make a left-hand turn out, there was not.
So it's really the return?
It would probably be the return. I imagine students are not exactly chomping at the bit to speedily get to school, but going home from Pine Street.
Well, I would think as well, because there would actually probably be going back to school, there'd be 3 stop signs there. Because you still got to stop at Water,
Yeah, well, there's
And Pine.
James and Pine,
Or
and
James and
Water
Pine.
and James.
And then you, yeah.
So there's two there versus one if you turn right on Grant Street and left on Water Street.
Mr. Mayor, there are two reasons why students do speed to get to high school, at our high school. One is competition for a parking space, and two is the bell that rings that says they have to be on time. So I do think there probably is both ways. This issue has been more than just speed, though, in what I've seen down there. The more predominant issue is people cutting that corner, and the visibility coupled with the speed. And to me, to begin with, even speed bumps would be less impactful than a stop sign there, because the stop sign's going to make them stop where they need to be and make a complete turn instead of cutting that corner. And that's been my hope all along, is that we do something to keep that corner from getting cut.
Yeah, that was a lot of the, that's what I remember, a lot of the concern was in the video, or the little video that they showed, or the pictures, was cutting the corner and almost,
And
people
it's-
sideswiping, and they're almost head on.
And it's less the traffic coming up Water, because they're already in the right-hand lane and they're going to make a
Exactly.
right-hand turn. It's the other direction.
You guys want to come and weigh in on this? Come up to the mic and... Yes. Let's try to hold ourselves to 3 minutes so we can get out of here before midnight.
And I can't talk very well, so.
Oh, perfect.
I already have it. Do we need to sign in up here, or we already have, so?
This is a 40-footer coming down Water Street and up against the pole that you're saying want to replace or whatever. And he was touching,
40-footer?
we had to go out and say, hold it. But he is. And our house is probably 40 feet away from that. I mean, it's a big pole, and it's got a transformer sitting at the top of it. And that transformer probably moved this much when he went up there. And it's scary. And that's why somebody come out from a outfit that is going to do some changes.
Mr. Mayor, we can't get any of this on the
Okay.
record.
Why don't you get closer to the microphone so we can record you?
Well,
Thank you.
so you've got somebody that's being hired, I guess, to come out and look at what's going to be done about the poles. And that was one of the poles they're talking about, is if the city would like it removed, he read that you guys put out on your draft. And he was out there, and I went out there and talked to him, and he says, well, what do you think about this pole? So I took and showed him that picture. And he said, yes, we could move it. And I said, well, all I care about is that something, that the pole, that the truck hit it, we was able to back him up. But I said, what would have happened if he'd hit that pole? He said, well, it'd have probably been in your front yard or right next to your front window. So that's one of the things that's on here, relocate existing utility poles.
Yeah, Mr. Johnson, how old is that picture?
Last year.
So wasn't there some signs placed to keep truck traffic from entering that since then?
Yeah, but when,
It was in existence before.
Yeah.
During its time.
Once you go past...
but what they also did is whenever the high school was building, we had trucks coming down there not knowing where they were going. They didn't know where the high school was at, and there's several times that the police chief come down there and wanted to know why can't they read the sign that says no truck traffic? And
Apparently not.
no, and one of them happened to be loaded with windows, and I said, where are you going? He said, I'm trying to get to the new high school. So, but I mean, they come down, they probably hasn't been in the last 3-4 months, but it's, as that picture will show you, that's 40 foot trying to get around that corner. And if a car can't get around the corner, how do you expect a 40-footer to get down there? We had to go and move all the cars, had to find the people that owned the houses on the other side of the street, and so that they, right next to these people, so that he backed up and then he finally got around.
Would moving the pole solve that problem for trucks that aren't supposed to be there in the first place?
No, it wouldn't solve it, but it would, if somebody hit it, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not certain whether the recommendation came for moving the pole and reducing the radius of that corner. That is not what we're proposing, because that would in fact create a...
Microphone.
Chris Edwards, 109 Grant Street. That would in fact create a faster path for people to make it around. Harold's concern is strictly the danger of that pole, which is repeatedly getting bumped by large trucks of falling on his house, period. According to the recommendations, that particular item has no cost to the city. If they just need the approval to say do it, then PGE will do it. And that's almost a completely separate issue.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's been a long time since I've looked at that pole intimately, but it seems like it's a corner where the line turns there, so a simple relocation is going to be more problematic, but whatever. Okay.
But the indication from the city is that there is no cost to the city for said work.
Right. They will relocate when we request them to do so. But would the striping, would the change in striping to differentiate and delineate the two lanes there, would that solve the problem for you?
Specifically for the pole and Harold's issue with the danger involved, no. Even having that transformer floating over his house.
No, not the pole problem, the traffic problem.
I'd like to speak specifically to the,
go ahead.
the traffic calming or issue, but I think Ally had some things she'd like to start with first. Just wanted to clarify for Harold's sake.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. My name is Alicia Edwards, and I live at 109 Grant Street. And I received a copy of the proposal written, the recommended motion written by Rob Charles. And I have to say that I am in opposition of what was actually recommended. I'm confused a little bit because we were really clear about what we were proposing, and it was kind of conveyed to us that a very clear study was going to be done that would record volume and speed and so on and so forth. And I'm not an expert in that, so I, defer to the experts. But what I'm reading, it's very vague, and it's hard to discern whether or not. One thing is, one of the suggestions is pertaining to actual speeding issues and speed humps, or if it is the stop sign issue, and what constitutes a warrant, or what warrants, what criteria is met or not met.
Is that included in your packet?
The
UMTC, Uniform Traffic Code information?
One page from it, yes.
In section,
Yes, which
and then the
contains
speed
contradictions.
data for the week survey we did.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, I have that information, but, for example, the recommended motion is these improvements will notify drivers to slow down and aid in keeping the drivers in their designated area or lane. But if you need to notify the driver to slow down and you go to signage and striping versus installing a stop sign, I don't understand what kind of study you guys run. I'm not trying to be like a know-it-all, but it's confusing to me that even in the stop sign manual that you guys quote from, where it talks about that there's just really a guidance on the conditions that might exist that an engineer could choose from. We have shown, even your own numbers have shown, that both A and D would qualify for a decision to actually install a stop sign. And I think if the goal is to make it confusing, as it doesn't even talk about in this report that I have anyway, what a stop sign would cost versus what the proposed signage and striping is going to cost. It does talk about the speed humps, but I'm not sure what I expected. I guess I expected something that was, if you're going to do a survey or a study on volume and speed on North Water, then you're going to, that's going to pertain to that issue. And if you're going to talk about issue with people coming around that intersection and corner and safety and stop signs, then that would be identified in here too. And so at any rate, for those reasons, it's too vague, and so I'm opposed to it.
Well, I didn't write the report, and I'm not a traffic engineer, but I do know that for stop signs to be placed, they have to meet one or more of those warrants for us to install it or to recommend installation of stop signs. And according to the city engineer, none of those warrants exist. So the traffic speed data suggests that 90% of the traffic on that roadway goes less than 26 miles per hour.
But
Opposed to the speed limit.
your
being
study
55.
didn't do anything about restricting view. I didn't read anything where someone went out and said whether that view was restricted.
Right, and part of that criteria also says that a less important road intersects with a main road, and those are both collector streets, are they not?
They're both local
They're both local streets, so that warrant would not be met either.
I think what it tries to refrain
avoided
from.
the obstruction
I'm
of
just
view
trying
issue.
to tell you
skipped
how
over
the
that.
warrants are.
Right,
Can
no,
we
I
talk about
understand, I understand, it needs to meet one or, but what I am also saying is that if you're going to require such a in-depth study and a complete analysis of something as a stop sign, then this is vague and it's and it doesn't follow any kind of like order or logic. Because you can't make a motion or justify something without having to back up the data, right? Or use it in some kind of clear way to connect it. There has to be some kind of consistent connection. And
Would you say that the speed data is objective data?
I would say that your speed data is, there are some spots about that.
I'm
It
looking
doesn't seem
forward.
to work.
I'm looking forward to speaking specifically to the data.
Wait, I'm
Thank you.
done.
I'm just trying to help you out with the warrants.
Right.
In terms of us placing stop signs.
Sure.
I would like to say something, because I live right on 1310 North Water, and I'm retired. I see the traffic every day. I can tell you that in the mornings, when the kids go to school, their mothers, their dads, they have no time, they're in a hurry to go somewhere, so they go. So probably 30% of the people that do that in the morning is parents, okay? And so then you say, well, what's the other time? Lunchtime. You watch that at lunchtime. For the last 2 weeks, we've probably had a motorcycle police officer out there. I would say he was there today. He wasn't there Friday. So I asked my granddaughter, who goes to the Silverton High School, I said, I guess I don't understand. She said, well, I didn't see a police officer this morning. And I said, I wonder why. And she said, I don't know. So she come home that night, and I said, did you ask about it? And she said, yeah. You know what they told me? When the first kid comes down the road, if he sees a police officer, because you turn to come down Grant, he's on his motorcycle, they start texting. They tell everybody. I mean, so that's part of the deal right there. So today I talked to him. I went down there and I told him what was going on, and he said, well, I think that's pretty good if that's what happens, they tell the kids. And I said, well, then where were you at Friday? I said, there was 2 cars, a pickup and a car come down the road, and one of them come down sideways when he went around the corner. He was going so fast. But there was no police officer. I mean, we spend a lot of money with police officers. I mean, I usually see one there on the corner of Grant, and usually there's a police car down where that says no trucks allowed. So they're there. There's a presence of police officers. But couldn't our money be spent better? Let's fix the problem. Let's don't worry about how much it's going to cost right now, because eventually somebody's going to get hurt out there. It's going to happen. If it's raining, like at lunchtime, I don't know why I know why they come down there at lunchtime, because there's one less stop sign. Let me tell you, I've seen them race down there. I've seen 2 girls going down the road, and they're side by side. Now, you people don't see it. I do. I see it. It's only happened, I've seen it twice. And then some kid was going down there where the old hospital used to be, and another kid was going around him, and so what did the kid do? He'd get over in the incoming lane, and so the kid backed around, he'd come the other way, and a kid in the back of the pickup opened the door so that he could not go around on the right side. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we see. You people don't see it because you're not down there. I see it.
I believe you.
A lot of people see it.
Okay.
Mr. Teal sees it. I mean, it's just...
But is a stop sign going to prevent people driving side by side down the street?
But then, maybe we need to teach them that in school. I mean, this is an example. This is what happened, I think, Friday. Friday at about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, the high school was down there with the police officer on the motorcycle. They got done shooting whatever they're going to show the high school kids, right? So there was a pickup that was up by the church, Catholic church, and he started going down there. Well, he laid the rubber to that pickup. So the police officer was there. I mean, what could he do? So he jumps on his motorcycle, he goes up there and apparently gets the kid. Anyway, they're shooting this, so I come back out and I asked him, I said, well, did you get him? And he said, yep. And I said, what was his excuse? And he said he was having a bad day. And he said, you know what I told him? You're going to have a worse day now.
Okay.
But this is the problem we're facing.
Okay, let's move on.
Thank you. Yeah, I just really wanted to kind of talk about the data itself from the research. To kind of roll back a month ago, we sat and heard from the council, Brian, and Rob Charles was present. He is the preparer of this proposal, and I'd like to quote from him. Pulled this off Scan TV and transcribed what he had said. The 24-minute, 14-second mark, Rob Charles says we would need to, the engineering division, would need to do warrants for those stop signs. So there's a series of warrants in the traffic control manual that intersection needs to meet before we install stop signs. We have traffic counters out there that'll give us volumes and speeds so we can come back with that information at the next council meeting for the council to look at that data. I don't know what the speeds are going to show. There's speeders out there when I was out there. If it's the 85th percentile, 85% of the people are going below 25 miles per hour, then it will be a council decision whether or not they want to put stops, speed humps, that is, which is occurring only certain periods of time, not consistently. So that's something we'll come back and provide information to the council on. So here we are today, 85% of the people going below 25 miles per hour, then it will be a council decision. That's what he said.
Okay.
Look at the data. Monday, October 4th, 85 percentile is at 24.5 miles an hour below, okay? Next day, 26.1 above. And this is in the 85 percentile column, if you follow along. 25.5 above. 24.8, barely below. No data for some reason from 10.8, just absent. 10.9, 85, 24.9, right at. 24.8, just a touch under. 25.9, definitely above. 23.2, that was on a Monday, but notice also there's the gaps in the data. I don't know, I think they were having some trouble with the machine because there's definitely some holes here and there in the data. Tuesday, oh, are we repeating? Tuesday the 5th, is this the second copy?
Each direction.
25.4, oh, east and west, thank you. Okay, 25.4 above. 25.2 above. 24.5, just under. No data again from Friday, very important day with regard to school students and their speeds. Saturday, 26.2 above.
Okay.
25.9 above.
Just out of curiosity, where was the speed measuring equipment?
Oh, it was about a third of the way from James to Water, not even near the intersection.
Okay,
Right off of Sherman.
okay.
So, and my point is, in this statement, prepared again by Rob Charles, but accepted and reviewed and approved by Brian Cosgrove, the data indicates that there are very few cars exceeding the posted limit, and he addresses the 85th percentile, at or near 25 for all 7 days. I'm sorry, I'm a data guy, and it's he's saying two things. The data's saying one thing, what Brian said was a criterion is another, and it seems to me that it meets the 85 percentile on the nose, and with a safety margin.
I think this can probably be wrapped up fairly easily if a counselor wants to make a motion to install 1 or 2 stop signs at the corner of Grant and North Water Street.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion?
Discussion. I have a concern, and my concern, if you recall, is about a year ago or 2 years ago, I went out and looked at a bunch of the sidewalks within the council, sidewalk crossings and things, and one of the items that I mentioned on that sheet that I provided was that on Grant Street, between Pine and Water, there is no sidewalk, and we have school children there. Even if we have a stop sign, we have a safety issue, in my opinion. And I recommended at that time, and I will recommend again tonight, that there be no parking on Grant Street, and that be striped as a pedestrian zone. And yes, thank you, Councilor Cummings, because that is a safety issue. You have a stop sign there. Now we have a bunch of students that walk down Water Street, and then they're walking right in the middle of the street in Grant, because we don't have sidewalk there. So we can't afford to put sidewalk in. At least let's put no parking and a pedestrian path. And I would ask that that motion be amended to include that.
Discussion, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I agree completely, because I think even having that is necessary, but that even makes the need for stop sign more greater, because if there's not cars on the side of the road, they're going to be more inclined to drive fast. So I would amend my motion to include the striping, the no parking, and 2 stop signs.
Can I add that on the speed, when you're talking about a 0.6 or a 1 to 2 mile per hour over, you're not talking about a speeding problem. Secondarily, if you look at the warrants, it specifically says the stop sign should not be used for speed control. Stop signs should be installed in a manner that minimizes the number of vehicles having to stop. At intersections where a full stop is not necessary at all times, consideration should be given to using less restrictive measures. That's the proposal that came back to you, because that's what traffic engineers recommend.
And I'd like to expand on his excerpt from the traffic manual, specifically under section...
Don't we have a motion? Can we do that?
I'm sorry.
We're in discussion.
Yeah.
To me, the stop sign isn't necessarily there to control speed. It will, I think, but the reason I want the stop sign there is to create, stop cars from cutting the corner. If they have to stop, they're going to make a complete turn. That's my, real basis for doing that. So I understand the staff's recommendation. I appreciate it, and I think I understand setting a precedent, mildly concerned about making sure we do that right, but I think this is a unique situation, and they're going to be case by case, and I think that's what will solve this problem best and cheapest.
Quick further discussion, though. If we remove a lot of the traffic from Grant and Water Street by putting the stop sign in so that there's no longer any advantage to taking the express route, then it will move traffic back over to Pine Street, which is a little better designed for it. So maybe we should do the stop sign first, and then if there is still pedestrian automobile interaction at Grant and Grant and Water, then address the sidewalk issue, rather than doing a little bit of sidewalk now or a little bit of street striping for a pedestrian path now.
So your suggestion, Mr. Mayor, is that when there's cars that are parked because of the Catholic Church along Grant and Water, the students that are walking along Water Street and then that sidewalk ends at Grant, and now they're walking in the middle of the street. Unlikely, because now we have a stop sign there, but, you know, they'll be in the middle of the street when cars arrive. To me, if we're going, I can support a stop sign only if we put a pedestrian path in. Otherwise, we're not addressing the safety issue.
I concur with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave my motion alone and keep it to include striping of both sides, no parking, as well as the stop signs.
Okay.
It has not been seconded.
I'll second it. Yeah.
The change.
I'll second the change.
And just out of curiosity, how would that affect the residents in the area, having no parking on at least one side?
You know, the primary thing is the safety of pedestrians, motorists, citizens, and visitors to Silverton. That's the most important thing. If we have to figure out another deal to do with our vehicles, we'll do that. That's not what this is about.
Okay.
What you're suggesting is crowding now with lanes for cars even closer into this little narrow corner. I object, sorry. You're talking about striping a sidewalk onto the roadway, correct?
Correct.
Okay, will that increase the size of that roadway and the tightness of a corner which still has no traffic marking?
No, it will have the reverse effect.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
I do not support the sidewalk, but that's not the motion before us. I mean, I do not support the
The
walkway.
amendment of the sidewalk to
Right.
the motion.
We're just supporting striping, so there's no parking. That's gonna create a safer place for people to walk.
No.
It needs to be clarified, I think.
No, my understanding of, Counselor, your modification was to stripe a space on the street surface for a sidewalk.
Correct. Yes. I'm sorry, my understanding was just striping a no parking zone. I didn't understand we can actually stripe a designated walkway.
Why don't we take it in two steps? Let's talk about stop sign first and then sidewalk or walking path in the street second. Want to modify your...
Well, yeah, I'll just clarify my motion, that my intent was to include striping no parking on that particular spot, not to put a specific designated walkway on the street. I think it's problematic to tell kids you're supposed to walk on the street. I just think if we stripe no parking and get the cars out of there and create a wider area, by intention, it's going to be safer without striping a specific pedestrian walking place on the street.
Okay, so
a walkway.
we're not there yet. So my restatement of your motion then is to install two stop signs.
Two stop signs and make both sides of that street the extension of Grant Street to be no parking.
At all times. Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
And I seconded that.
Okay, further discussion?
Yes.
Bill?
Counselor Thomas, what was your proposal? Does that meet your request?
No, I'll be voting no.
Well, we would be taking up the issue of a walkway as a secondary motion.
I have no guarantee that that will pass.
Okay, well, further discussion on my part. I am going to reluctantly support this, primarily because the reluctance is because I have this concern that we are going to have requests like this in other areas of the community. I'm sitting here thinking about this, and there's a couple just in my neighborhood alone that this same problem, regardless of whether there's a school in close proximity or not. The case presented of the concern of the pedestrians walking in that area, and I, like Counselor Thomas, did spend 2 days last week watching that activity take place. I didn't see it as near as expanded as you're presenting it. I spent quite a bit of time. The staff has recommended against not doing the stop signs based on past and uniform practices. And again, the reluctance I have is what is going to come after this. But until we can resolve the corner and the pedestrian walkways, I can support this.
Further discussion?
Question?
Question been called for. Those in favor of installing 2 stop signs at Grant and North Water and striping no parking on the extension of Grant Street between Water and Pine, signify by an aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Appears to be 5-2, so you have stop signs. Is there a secondary motion to put a sidewalk or walking path on Grant Street from Water to Pine?
So moved.
A second?
What are we doing?
Well, we're taking up Randall's suggestion of putting striping a walkway onto Grant Street. Is there a second?
Did you get that in your budget? Yeah. Is that going to discussion? We haven't had a second.
We haven't got a
Okay.
second.
Is there? Can you think of any ramifications?
We need a second before we do any discussion.
Second.
Okay.
Can you think of any ramifications of doing that? Something that we're missing right now? Should we bring that back?
I would be cautious.
Yeah, I mean, the law of unintended consequences.
Right.
I mean.
And pedestrians on a roadway.
Right, exactly. That's my concern.
Striping a
I'd rather
roadway
say
for a
sidewalk.
pedestrian, that's a normal place where people expect to find cars, but not people, especially walking down the road.
It's like the crosswalk on C Street that is not connected to
Okay,
anything.
I'll withdraw my second. Can we bring that back next month?
I think the proposal of sidewalk is the best.
Sidewalk
The
or...
sidewalk cost?
Yeah. Would that work, Council? Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I'd rather say sidewalk.
Okay. I think we're done with you. Thank you very much. Now, moving back to 5.1, discussion of urban chickens. We have, this is discussion. We will probably take no action tonight. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm up for no action tonight. Their plan is? Okay. Ah, there it is. Okay, so the proposal before us is to incorporate anything about urban chickens into a development code review rather than doing this ad hoc.
A future development code amendment.
Can we wait?
Yeah.
As we saw from the survey, there is significant support to amend our code to allow chickens on lots smaller than an acre as currently allowed. I have included some suggested standards for that, and that would include the charging of a permit fee of $50 and a one-time fee. Because the respondents to the survey, there were the highest number of respondents in favor of establishing chickens if a permit was required.
Excuse me, where did that number exactly come from?
If you look at the survey results, the first page of the memo, there are different qualifications for support of urban chickens. The first one is supporting them as long as there were 3 and they're confined to the backyards and a reasonable distance. And so there was a significant number of people that supported that. Second one.
That was the 38% number?
That was 39%.
Okay.
Almost 40, 39.
Right. And then if you look at the second level of support or area of support, it was allowing 3 confined to backyards, and the city issues a permit, and the person owning the chickens is required to take a class on how to properly care for them.
Okay, and that percentage is?
That is 16.2.
I see. So somehow you have extrapolated from 39% to 67% because you're taking Part A and Part B.
If I'm looking at all the people that support urban chickens and including the regulations that they would like to see in totality in the recommended standards.
Isn't that same percentage, though, the approximately 16%, isn't that equivalent to the percentage that say absolutely no chickens, no how, no where?
That's true.
Uh-huh.
So there's...
So should we add that in as a subtraction factor or
well,
fudge it some other way?
That's why it's not included in the 67%.
What are we arguing over the $50? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. I'm saying
agree.
permits for chickens?
Well, why don't we?
If you look at the other jurisdictions,
yeah,
the
okay.
comparable study, there
Okay.
are a number of jurisdictions which do require permits. I did not include a recommendation for an annual permit, though I don't think that's necessary in our case. What is recommended would be a one-time permit, and that is to accommodate the people that supported the requirement for a permit per our survey. That's why that was included as a recommendation.
Well, I think what you provided gives a lot of options.
Mhm.
Because you've got a lot of things, and Salem, this is the language that they just adopted, correct?
Right,
'Cause
they
this
do
is
require a
passed.
permit.
Yeah.
You're not adopting a fee tonight.
So,
Right, exactly.
we're
It's
not-
just
Going,
for discussion.
going back to the recommendations, it's recommended that roosters continue to be prohibited, 3 hens be permitted only in the rear yards, that an enclosure be required, and that 10 feet minimum setback be provided from property lines and minimum 20 feet from dwellings on adjacent properties. You also see in the memo that staff included the cost that it will take to do this development code amendment. So we are recommending that we postpone any amendment until we conduct the other planning studies that projects that we currently have out there, including the economic opportunity analysis, the industrial park feasibility analysis, and the West Side Land Use and Transportation Plan. Those projects will be well underway mid-next year. I really feel that the Planning Commission needs to take a closer look at what types of development code amendments we may want to include with any future amendment to our ordinance, so that we would include any amendments to our current urban chicken ordinance at that time as well.
So it appears to me from this chart that out of 10 jurisdictions, 7 do not require a permit and 3 do. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So what do those 7 know that the 3, or what do the 3 know that the 7 don't about registering your chickens?
Well,
and charging a fee therefore.
If it's at its council's discretion whether or not a permit would be required or not as part of this process, that's council for decide. And I really feel that the Planning Commission should weigh in on whatever the recommendations are.
Yep. Okay.
Yes. Just discussion.
Right.
Okay. I'm just making my feelings known that a license fee for poor people to have their own chickens seems unnecessary.
Well, I actually agree. Yes.
What?
The less bureaucracy we put into this, the better.
Ladies and gentlemen, news broadcast.
I was kind of dumbfounded by the $50 fee in Salem, quite honestly.
Well, you know, we put the question in there because
Right,
we knew
exactly.
there were other
And then
people
again-
that did it, but there's no way that I would support a $50
Right.
fee or necessarily.
Strictly discussion, it's got to go through the Planning Commission.
Okay.
But I think there's some really good
Yeah, some great.
code in here
And-
from various cities.
As a matter of fact, it would have been really nice to have had this information, probably even at the Planning Commission level when this was first discussed. This is a lot more comprehensive, gives a better picture of what other communities are doing, and would have probably helped us when we had this come before us before.
So are you suggesting that the Planning Commission or the staff start the process of putting this together now? You know, when you talk about future.
I'm suggesting that we postpone making this amendment until next year.
No, I understand that, but making the amendment would be what we do, but
Right.
all the legwork that gets done before that, when would that start, do you think?
That would take place in the spring of next year, when the Planning Commission would relook at the development code as a totality and including this amendment as well.
So we'll consider that scheduled, not just we're going to wait.
Correct.
For an ambiguous time to, okay.
But this part could be done prior to, have this part completely ready to go, roll out.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to have the invested parties in town feel like we're moving forward and they can do their part sooner than later.
Okay. So do you have direction?
I do.
We can
Thank
move
you.
on? Okay, thank you. All right, we have reached the end of the agenda and we're ready for council discussion with the city manager update.
No news is good news.
All right, Councilor Thomas.
I have a couple items tonight. One is, we have a lot of public hearings in which land use and whatnot, where if I understand from the city attorney correctly during my conversations with him, we are relegated to time limits, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, rebuttal times, et cetera, et cetera. And I got to thinking after last month's meeting, when we had during public comment period 45 minutes provided to some citizens, that it wasn't really fair to the young man in front and the gentleman behind, that they were only provided 3 minutes and the others received 45 minutes. And as I started thinking about it, I recall that in my line of work, there's been times I've been in other city council chambers, and most of those chambers, from small cities such as Umatilla to large cities such as Gresham, all have a kind of a light system. It's a green, yellow, and a red light system in which it's timed, and it's used for public hearings and used for different periods, comment periods. And I was thinking that I'd like to make a motion that we have staff investigate the feasibility of installing some sort of system that can be used by the Planning Commission, be used by ourselves, especially during the public hearing processes, that would allow measuring of time to make sure that we're being fair to everybody equally. So I make that a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Council.
Discussion?
Yes, sir.
I just weigh in and agree completely. We need some sort of system that makes it uniform, and then not only should we have a system, but at the outset of public comment, we should remind the audience what it is, so they know.
And obviously, when
Even though we have
if
something on the side.
a councilor or mayor asks a question,
Right.
then there's the time allotted back and forth, because this is a small town, and we need to have that conversation. But I also think we need some fairness, and depending on what the agenda items may be, we also have protocols. We're not supposed to go past start new items after 10, and we've found ourselves, because of land use issues that we have to address, where we've pushed agenda items off and stuff. So.
Well, discussion again on that.
Yes.
There was actually a gentleman that wanted to speak during items not on the agenda last month, and he had to wait till council discussion because of the time.
Correct.
Yeah, so.
And further discussion, I've testified at Salem City Council several times. When the light's green, you can talk. When the lights are red, you get off.
I guess I'm the odd man out here in more ways than one, because I figure I'm here to hear what the public has to say. And sometimes it takes them longer than 3 minutes to say it, but we have a motion.
Question.
We did, didn't we?
Yes.
And a second?
Yes.
And the motion was to be restated, to look into or to purchase a timing system?
City staff to investigate the feasibility of installing a light timing system.
Okay. Further discussion?
Question.
Question been called for. Those in favor signify by an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. All right.
And then a couple of other items. I noticed on our council discussion sheet, I've noticed this for quite a few months, Councilor Schmidt back in April of 2009 had discussed the railroad bridge crossing the creek and the need for that to be painted, and the possibility of placing a mural on there. And Ben Steele said yes, once the bridge is painted, they could work on putting a mural up. And Dave Root of Willamette Railway was fine with us, meaning the city, repainting the bridge. And I know there were some discussions that evolved on that. But I've driven by that bridge, and I'm looking at more paint that's fallen into the creek, and I actually am wondering if it's not Willamette Railway's responsibility to maintain that bridge, and if this may not be grounds for an EPA-type sanction with paint falling into our beloved creek. And I would ask, I don't know, I just asked to direct staff to further investigate that a little bit more and follow back up with us as to who's responsible for painting, because I could see with containment, paint containments and things, the city were to take that on, that could become quite costly. And with our budget cycles that we have, I think it's be more prudent for the railroad to take that on. And then,
with the only caveat, it should be the EQ, not EPA.
Oh, thank you. Yes, the EQ, not EPA. Thank you very much for the clarification, Mr. City Attorney. And then the other thing is with the election cycle that's been occurring, there's been some conversations and discussion on congestion. And I have noticed, generally I try to avoid the congestion, but I've taken some routes where I'm coming in the morning down Water Street and then turning down Main Street, and it's quite heavily congested. And I recall from about 2 years ago, and I was going to pull the meeting minutes, and I did not, but I did speak to the city manager about it, that our former Public Works Director, Mr. Rich Barstead, had spoken about the feasibility of putting a right turn only lane in Main and McLean, where you would turn right going from Water to Clay Street on Main. You would make a right turn. He said there was space available there, just a matter of working with the state, potentially with the state highway, and also striping. And I'm wondering if that may be not something that we should pursue more heavily at this time, rather than waiting for our TSP traffic light at the intersection at Main and Water. So I don't know if anybody wants to help direct staff to, I mean, it's just my thought, but to look into that, but they want to know.
Could we bring back Rich's report on that?
I would think that would be a
lot of this traffic in the morning is going straight up the hill, a right turn lane. That would be really.
It would be, and he at the time he said it was, but we just never followed up. So so can we do? You?
I'd like to see it come back. See us get the information.
Anybody else?
Back to us.
Yep. Okay. And then the other thing, I'm going to hold off until December, and then I'm going to also mention that our skate park fundraising committee for Silverton made the front page of the Life section of the Statesman Journal. We have some plans that are coming up, and our other counselor that represents the skate park fundraising committee, Councilor Schmidt, I believe is going to speak to those tonight, so I'm not going to take her thunder. But I did want to point out that, there was some good news there. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Stoll.
I'd like to remind everyone that the second annual Jingle Bell Ball, sponsored by the Oregon Garden Foundation Board, will be held December 11th, starting at 6 p.m. at the J. Frank Schmidt Pavilion at the Oregon Garden. And in lieu of those 16% that voted on the community survey not to allow chickens at all, I think that you're going to hear more about this when it comes back to you folks. Good luck.
Bill.
I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
Sherry.
Just a couple things that came up at the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, and one was that Salem had just passed their chicken ordinance, but they also were looking at just kind of informational, breaking out their stormwater rates, and they were having a public hearing last week or the week before, and they're also looking at raising their water rates. So, yeah.
So we just point to them.
Those were a couple of things that came up that they mentioned, and I just thought, since they were kind of working on things that we've been talking about too, so. And I think that's all.
I'd like to thank staff for their prompt attention to a resident who was looking into a light shield for a building there, in the process of taking care of. Got a nice thank you letter from them, but whoever handled that, I'm not sure if it was Rob before he left, but they were very happy that we took care of that promptly for him. Next, I'd like to see if we have consensus to ask the staff to bring back a action changing the fire required water meter rates back down to being on par with the rest of standard residential water meters. And I got the sense the other night, a predominance of people sitting here want to see that happen, but officially I'd like to ask staff to bring that back for next month so we can get that taken care of.
I would concur.
I agree with that. But I would like to see it expanded on out to where the dollars that the offset dollar is going to come from.
And then last thing is if there's anybody watching or in the audience tonight that hasn't voted, please do so. This is your one chance every couple of years to have a voice.
That's it. Okay. Well, I want to thank Councilor Thomas for leading me this piece. Our skate park development and fundraising committee have put together a video. Actually, it's the development portion put together a video for the Pepsi Challenge. And we are going to release that on November 30th at the theater at the high school at 7 o'clock. A chance to learn a little bit more about the skate park. We'll have a little presentation on what's going on, a PowerPoint on that, and then you'll get to see that video before we actually release it. And for the month of December, I believe it is, everybody will have a chance to vote, and your vote makes the difference. You can vote every day for that month. And then the winner of that will be awarded the amount that they are asking for in their grant. And I believe we're asking for $50,000. We've raised it from $25,000. So that's a substantial amount, and we'll get emails out to everybody, and then we hope you do the same and pass it on, and we can get a lot of folks voting for that. But come out November 30th and see it. It's very good. It's really nice, and I think you'll really, really like it. And I think it'll be something that we can be proud of that hits Pepsi Challenge. So that was one thing. I'm not sure, Andy, if you've gotten calls on this, and I honestly didn't notice today on my way home, but the inevitable pothole at the bottom of McLean and I'm sure you heard about it. It's about that deep by now. The last time I accidentally hit it. So just wanted to mention that one.
Thank you.
Otherwise, I think that's all for me. Thank you.
If you'd stop hitting that pothole, it wouldn't get bigger.
Believe me, my car's clear gone when I hit it.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have that and nobody else did. I'm curious about it. Let me borrow that from here. Okay, I had 2 items, now I have 3. Thank you, Sherry. We received a letter that was dated June 27th, but the city received it October 25th from Paul Gonzalez about their water problem or the drainage problem. Have you seen this?
Great. Yeah, I know
Okay.
I was going to bring it up, but I forgot, so I gave it to.
So is anything happening on that?
Yes.
Something positive? Uh-oh.
Well, I haven't personally been out there. I know Rob had been out there. He told me about it. I do have a copy of the letter.
Okay.
And I met with the gentleman today. He stopped in at the office. He has some questions about drainage, safety. There's a detention facility there. It's on private property and was built as part of the subdivision. There was no provisions provided as far as safety fencing, keep children out, liability type issues, and that's some of his concerns.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told him I'd go ahead and take a look into the project plans, look at the plat map, see exactly what was required as part of the development, and then meet out with him and look at the site. There's just not only his property, there's actually 2 properties that adjoin this detention facility, which is adjoining as well a public street. And to take a look at it, see how it relates with sidewalks and safety and what ownership the city has in this, because it's all on private property.
Okay. If you would report back to us next month when you have more information?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, my turn. Well, Sherry, we didn't make it by 7:15. I lost that bet. I have only 2 things. I was contacted by a resident on Felt Street. We did some parking, like Cherry Street, Fairview Street, removed parking, and apparently Felt Street, there is still no parking on one side of the street and all-day parking on the other, and it is a residential street. It's the one that's back behind the, well, it's around the corner from your house Steve, on Cherry Street. Mm-hmm. So was that also supposed to be residential parking with permit or something, and that didn't happen, or is what's there what got worked out?
I have a work order to finish those signs, and we were out last week to go ahead and get that done, and ran into some problems with some other property owners right there. So as soon as I coordinate with them, I'll finish that.
Oh, okay, so it's in the works?
I'm sorry?
It's in the works?
It's in the works, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's another one where we need to take a look at it. There's a property owner that was concerned about what side of the road was posted, no parking.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't involved. I just heard about it for the first time today, so I really don't have much information other than what Andy just mentioned. I've seen the map that identified as far as where to place the no parking signs. The homeowner who lives on the side that's saying no parking, which there's numerous residential on Phelps,
Mm-hmm.
is requesting that we post it on the opposite side, which would be on the hospital side.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a fair request. It's something that I need to just take a peek at, and I'm not sure exactly who started the whole process, if it was the hospital, if it was the property owners. I haven't had a chance to talk to Rob Charles, who obviously was involved in this process.
Yeah, and there are obviously a lot more curb cuts on the non-hospital side where the residences are, so it looks like there's probably more parking on the hospital side.
Oh, well, that's
So
more than likely true.
Something
Yes.
else to consider.
Something else to consider is how many cars you're going to be able to fit on the street.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And I have not followed up on this, but I had a email from one of your neighbors on Breonna, speaking about high weeds and lack of maintenance on East Main Street, 1303. I think I'm not sure where that is, but it's like their back end, so may need a looking at. And that's it for me, other than vote early and often. Oh, this isn't Chicago, sorry. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? We're adjourned. Thank you very much for your patience.
Hey, what